What's up, guys? This is Coach Grant with First Down Training, and today we're going to be breaking down the best routes a wide receiver can run in one-on-ones that a DB cannot guard if you run it correctly. So I hope this video helps you guys out. Hope it can teach you a few new things. But also, fellas, if you are a wide receiver and you want a daily training schedule to follow with all of the on-field drills that you should be doing as a wide receiver and all of the in-the-gym exercises you should be doing as a wide receiver, check out that very first link in the description below for our ultimate 8-week wide receiver workout plan. Oftentimes, wide receivers train wrong. They do unrealistic drills and gym exercises that aren't going to help them with on-field performance. That's what this schedule will do. So check out that very first link in the description below if you want some more information and how you can get access to that. Let's get started with this video. So the first route we're going to be talking about here is called a return route. So what is a return route? Some people call this a T route. It's not a whip route, though. It's kind of the opposite of a whip route. So we're going to play this thing full speed. So this wide receiver comes out, breaks to the out route, snaps this thing off, and returns back to the inside. So it's very similar to a whip, except you are breaking to an out and then coming back inside. Rather than when you're running a whip route, you would break to a slant and then whip back to the outside. So how does this route work? Now, this route, and it comes down to this, fellas. When it comes down to running routes, the routes might change, but the breaks stay the same and the concepts stay the same. That's why it's super important to understand all the routes and all the big picture concepts, because you can pretty much run anything on the route tree correctly. So what this route is trying to sell is obviously an out route. So just like anything on any single route, let's break it down to a simple 5-yard hitch. You got a DB who's off, you're running a 5-yard hitch. What are we trying to make him think for those first 5 yards? Trying to make him think it's a fade, trying to get him to backpedal, turn his hips and run. And how we do that is by running hard, running in full stride, and not changing my pad level, not raising up before a break to give an indicator. So on this specific route, we're not trying to sell a fade. We are trying to sell an out route, but the same principles applies. Again, just the route differs. So when he breaks to the out here, what does he have to do? You got to have some speed. You got to make sure that we are committed with my hips and shoulders. I'm in a low pad level position, not low to where I'm slouching over, but low enough to where it doesn't look like I'm making a break. And I got to make sure I run hard. Stride, speed, and body language. All of those things is what can help you sell your route and get a DB to commit. So now it's obviously much easier said than done. Just like how on a hitch route, just like how on a 15-yard comeback route, that break point, while you're running full speed, it's much easier said than done. I could say, hey, run as hard as you can, drop on a dime, and get out in 3 steps. And a lot of you would not be able to do that. And I don't even think myself could be able to do that on the first try and just go out there and do it, because it's much easier said than done. You need to make sure at the top of the break to be able to decelerate while you're selling the route, while you're being a salesman, is that's what the wide receiver position is all about. We have a violent hip drop. So when I'm selling this route, and that's why this return route is unguardable. A DB's not going to be able to guard this if you sell it correctly. When he drops, you see how low he's getting. He's dropping his butt down like he's sitting in a chair. He's bringing his chin to his knee. Those are the 2 points of emphasis that I try to get every single wide receiver to drop to at the top of the route. And again, I only like this type of movement on breaks like a comeback, like a curl, maybe a dig sometimes, or like a whip. Chin to knee, and then you sit your butt down. One of the biggest mistakes that wide receivers will make when they have a lot of speed going into a break, and this is why a lot of you feel like you fall forward and are going to fall flat on your face, is they will bend at the waist. Instead of dropping their butt down and sitting, what they will do is they will bend at their waist trying to get low. And instead of their chin going to their knee, it'll be like their chest is going over their knee. All that's going to cause you to do is drift forward and waste extra time at the top of the break. Running routes, being unguardable, running routes that DBs cannot guard, especially in one-on-ones, one-on-one game live situations. You have to eliminate all wasted time at the top of the route. You have to be able to sell your route, but let's eliminate wasted time. And that drop is how we can do that. But I have to make sure I'm sitting in a chair, and I have to make sure my chin goes to my knee. Now, the next mistake that a lot of wide receivers will make, especially on a break like this, this is a 3-step break. Very similar to what you would try to accomplish on a curl or a comeback, where you snap and then you take your second step, third step, and you're out of it. He took only 3 steps on this break. Now, that second and third step of this break are the 2 very, very minor detail steps, I guess you could say, but make a huge difference in the amount of wasted time that you have at the top of the route. So when he snaps down, when he snaps on that outside foot, now the main goal is to be able to get my hips parallel to that line of scrimmage so I can can drive back out and get out of this thing with little to no wasted motion. So you see his second step after this break is the key step. He snaps down here, but he pivots. You see how he almost turns that toe back to the line of scrimmage? Because now his hips are starting to turn, and that third step can hook back around. And when that third step hooks back around and your toes pointed towards the line of scrimmage, I personally don't like where his knee is at right here. But nonetheless, if you guys can keep more of like a positive shin angle where it's straight up, not so much like straight up, but just not caved in, it's going to be a safer cut for you. But now when your toe is turned to that line of scrimmage, you can drive off of that, get out of the break, and when you combine the right amount of steps, you combine selling the route and an explosive hip drop, that is how you run an unguardable route. That goes for a whip route, a return route, a comeback, a curl, anything. If you can master those things, selling, break point, little to no wasted motion to get you out fast, a DB will not be able to guard it. That goes for any single route that we have to run. Now, I talk a lot about the steps right here, right? I talk about the pivot step. I talk about, okay, he snaps, then he pivots and hooks. So many guys get caught up in those two steps that they forget step one, which is dropping their hips. They will try to turn their hips and turn their shoulders before they even change levels and sit in that chair, quote unquote, or bring their chin to your knee. Now, what that's going to do is when you start to turn your body and your feet start to turn early before you change levels, your body's going to get outside of your frame, your feet are going to be way over here, your body's going to be here, and we are going to slip. And not to mention, that gives away the route because a DB is supposed to be watching my hips. So make sure on any type of break, fellas, like let's use a comeback because that's easy to understand. You snap with the inside foot, let's snap down first, then worry about pivoting, then worry about hooking. Don't start to turn early because we're so caught up in eliminating extra steps. I'd rather have you take 5 steps, be fast, and sell it than slow down, give the route away, and take 3 steps. You're going to get locked up on that. The 5 steps, at least you have a chance. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. It doesn't always have to be 3 steps, fellas, but that is what we should be shooting for. Selling, break point, eliminate wasted motion. Okay, so now next route I want to talk about here is a corner route with an inside release. So this is an incorrect example of a corner route with an inside release, but the right concept. But he runs the route wrong. I tell you guys this all the time, especially if you're familiar with our videos, that if you know what to do off the line, that doesn't necessarily guarantee you separation. And then if you have great technique and you're very explosive, you run good routes, but you don't know when to apply it, you're not going to be able to get a ton of separation. You have to have a combination of both. You have to have the skills above the neck. You got to be able to have the right football IQ and to be able to execute the great technique that we build on. That's why it's so important for wide receivers to study film, study defenses, study coverages, and to do all of the on-field and gym work required to improve your skills. And if you're watching this video, you're doing the right things about the football IQ part of things. So let's break down this route. He's running a corner with a cut down split, so that means he's like lined up out of the slot, I should say, versus outside shade press. Corner with an inside release. Why did he take an inside release? And we're going to discuss that. But the reason why I love this route in one-on-ones, fellas, is because it's pretty much unguardable if you do it correctly because you're giving your quarterback space. You want to always try to run quarterback-friendly routes, which means that we make it an easy throw on the QB. I never want my quarterback to have to force it. I never want him to have to eat the ball because I'm not in a good position. Give him room, and trust me, you get a talented QB, you will get a ton of balls thrown your way and a ton of receptions. So we have outside shade press. Why does he take an inside release versus this? Because he will not be able to get the outside release. DB and outside shade press, and a lot of you are familiar with this from just watching these videos, and that's good. You should be familiar with these concepts. You should almost know what I'm going to say before I even say it. But he's outside shade press. He's trying to take away the outside. He does not want to let us run an out route, a corner route, a comeback, a fade. So he's trying to do whatever possible to force us to the inside. Now, this is one-on-ones, right? In one-on-ones, he doesn't have safety help in this scenario. But in a real game scenario, I guarantee you he probably has safety help if he's lining up outside shade. He's trying to funnel us to the inside all the way to his safety help. Now, since this is one-on-ones and the wide receiver cut his split down, why would he cut his split down to go run a drag or a dig? And if you catch a ball in one-on-ones, like on the opposite hash, like, okay, good for you, dude. You just took off and ran. Like, anybody can do that. So he's expecting an outside route. He lines up outside shade to make it difficult on the DB or on the wide receiver. So as a wide receiver, we need to know that. We need to know why he's doing it and take what he gives me, which is the inside release. So this wide receiver does the right job. He attacks his leverage outside. That's what we call attacking leverage, when you threaten him to where he doesn't want us to go. He's outside leverage. Let's try to set him up outside, because that is the best way to get a DB to start moving his feet. Threaten him where he doesn't want us to go. So now he takes the inside release, but The issue is on the stem. When he takes that stem to the inside, you see how far to the inside he goes here. And there's this big gap between the wide receiver and the DB. Now, the problem with that is even if he gets him on the move, like let's say he does this rocker step, and let's say he gets this DB to bite, there is way too much space for him to recover. So now when you run that corner, you're running right into him because we didn't get skinny on the stem. That is the biggest issue. We never want to have cushion between us and the DB. I want to be hip to hip with this DB to make him uncomfortable. So off the line, maybe he should have attacked his leverage, but then started to dip this shoulder. He should be pushing off of this foot, getting straight back up vertical so his hip can go right past the DB's hip. Because what's the worst that could happen? It's either this DB is going to be right on my hip, and I'm going to be in a position where I could take my hand and throw by, where you put your right hand on the back of his left shoulder or left hip and slip under, or you get so skinny and you have a lot of speed that you stack him and he's trailing your back hip. And that's the next example we're going to show here. So make sure, fellas, like we said, you could do everything right. You could have the right football IQ. You know how to run the route. You got off the press, but if you don't have the right technique, you don't know what to do to get you open, then you're not going to get open. Let's play this thing again, full speed. So remember, fellas, make sure we are getting skinny on my route. I'm not drifting way to the inside, leaving a cushion with me and the DB. So now, this next example, same scenario. Outside shade press, he's got to run a corner. Watch what he does here. Attacks his leverage same way, but you see how he dips that shoulder to reassess himself back over the top and to restack this DB. That is textbook right there, fellas. He attacks him outside, takes the inside release. Very easily could have just kept running to the inside and gone on the opposite hash, or opposite side of the hash, I guess I should say. But he gets skinny and works back into the hash, works back into this DB's hip and shoulder. Because now, one of two things could happen. Either he restacks, and when we restack and get him to just hesitate, there's not that big gap between the two of us to where he can recover. Now I got over the top and I gave my QB space. Remember, like I said in the first example, we want to give the QB space. DB wants to take away the outside. But imagine if he forced the outside. Let's say he attacked the inside shoulder and tried to release outside. DB's going to get hands and squeeze him all the way to that sideline. So when he breaks, he's not going to have any room. That's why we take the inside release, and it's an easy way to restack if my release is clean. Okay, so let's play this full speed. So now, everybody's biggest fear on this. Well, coach, what if the DB's right there? And we talked about this. What do you got to do? You got to throw him by, right? So let's look at this example. This is probably a harder example than what we just saw. He's in off-man coverage about 6 yards away, and this guy's got to run a corner at like 8 to 10. So watch what he does here. He attacks the inside shoulder, give the QB space, but you see how he slips underneath him, fellas? That's all it is. It's all about having a plan at the top of the break. So many guys get so caught up in what they're going to do off the line. How am I going to attack this press? What release should I do? Fellas, you just got to understand off the line. It's about knowing where his leverage is, knowing what the DB's responsibility is, being able to keep timing with your quarterback from knowing that, and then being able to keep spacing by taking the correct release, not forcing it into his leverage. So again, this wide receiver attacks inside shoulder, he breaks, all he does is just slip underneath this DB. It'd be the same thing in press if that DB was slightly ahead of you or right on your hip. You need to have that plan at the top of the break, and you need to go over that plan constantly in your head so it is a reflex and we can play fast. Because I know some of you are probably a little bit overwhelmed by all this. You're like, man, how am I supposed to think about all this? You got to see it over and over and over again. Let's play this thing again, full speed one more time. So that corner route versus outside leverage, whether it's press or whether it's off man, is an unguardable route in one-on-ones. All right, fellas, really want to thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to leave those in the comment section below. Always appreciate the feedback. It's always great to hear from you guys as usual. And again, fellas, if you would like our ultimate 8-week wide receiver workout plan, over 500 plus wide receiver drills and gym exercises all mapped out with sets and reps, check out that very first link below if you're interested. I'll see you guys next time.